Hello guys, if you watch my recent videos, you may be aware that I used to own a Crossfire X setup of two HD 7850s, and with the synthetic benchmarks that I posted on YouTube, the scalability performance was absolutely spectacular, pretty much nearly performing to the scalability of 100% and utilizing the full potential of the second HD 7850. But synthetic benchmarks are really known, for squeezing as much performance out of the graphics card. It's really known for Crossfire or SLI configurations really showing their effectiveness. But when it comes to launching a game, that's when the driver issues, the SLI driver issues, Crossfire, whatever, that's when the technology, even though it's a really spectacular technology, but it really shows its drawbacks in the sense that basically the drivers are not really mature enough for this, and it's not even really the driver's fault. It's just that when the game first comes out, you really have to wait for a driver to come out the majority of the time to actually take full advantage of the Crossfire or SLI configuration. And another thing with the multi GPU setup is that you do get a bit of micro stutter. And I remember when I was reading up on this before I had bought another HD 7850, but now I really understand what it is, and it does subtract from the gameplay and take away from the overall smoothness. So when I went back to this graphics card here that you see is a HD 7970. So when I went back to this, the smoothness of the gameplay was exceptional. It was so much more smoother. It really just blew me away. And it is because my brain adjusted to the micro stutter of the multi GPU setup of my two HD 7850s. But in synthetic benchmarks, I want to go back to that. The two HD 7850s, obviously, they outperform this single HD 7970. And that is because, like I said before, synthetic benchmarks take full use or near full use of multi GPU setups. But when it comes to actual gaming, the single HD 7970 that you see right there outperforms the two HD 7850s, and there's really no contest. And the reason being so is that, like I said before, the Crossfire doesn't really take full advantage when it comes to gaming because the applications really don't, support it that well as opposed to a synthetic benchmark. So this HD 7970 that you see here is a Sapphire Dual X revision. It overclocks amazingly well, and I got it for a really, really good deal, and I got it used for 320 bucks. And I sold my HD 7850s for 320 bucks, so it's essentially somewhat of a trade, even though I didn't actually literally trade my graphics cards for this. So yeah, this is a really good deal. It overclocks to about 1.2, pretty much 1.24 gigahertz. And my old HD 7850 that was able to overclock really well was able to hit 1.22 gigahertz. So an HD 7970 at 1.24 gigahertz is a beast, and it pretty much outperforms the GTS 680. Also though, I don't really run this graphics card at that high clock rate because in order for me to run it at 1.24 gigahertz, I'm going to have to bump the voltage up to 1.25 volts or 1.3 volts, and as a result the temperature is incredibly high, hitting about 85, 86 degrees Celsius and turning my computer into a portable heater. Last night when I was doing some benchmarks at that high clock, I was just amazed at how hot the computer chassis used to get. Also, the fan speed was really, really loud, even though it's two of them to help cool this beast of a graphics card down. So I ended up pushing the core clock down to 1.2 gigahertz flat at 1.187 volts. And in synthetic benchmarks, you do see a drop in score because of the lower clock, but in gaming where it actually is more, random scenarios for the graphics cards to handle, I really don't see a difference or feel a difference between this level of smoothness between 1.2 gigahertz and 1.24 gigahertz, or sometimes my graphics card was able to hit about 1.26 gigahertz, and around that area it'll eventually freeze up and revert back to the desktop with the display driver crashing. But so the max this can hit is 1.24, but I really didn't feel any smoothness differences between 1.24 gigahertz and 1.2 gigahertz, but I definitely felt a smoothness difference between 1.2 gigahertz and 1 gigahertz flat. And definitely from stock, which is 925 megahertz, all the way up to 1.2 gigahertz, I can definitely feel the level of smoothness that increases by higher in the clock settings. This graphics card has 2 BIOSes, as you can see here. There's a BIOS switch right here. There's 2 options. If you can hear that flicking back and forth. So by flicking this switch this way, it sets the specifications of this HD 7970 to the same as a HD 7970 gigahertz edition, which has the stock clock settings at 1 gigahertz, which was AMD's strategy to reclaim the fastest graphics card over the GTX 680 when that launched. And then flicking the BIOS switch over here to the left, it reverts this HD 7970 to a sort of pretty much a stock HD 7970 with the core clock being at stock at 925 megahertz. Either BIOS can overclock with a overclocking utility, and you can also flash the BIOS. So suppose you have a nice overclock, for my instance, 1.2 gigahertz. I can flash 1.2 gigahertz to the BIOS. So anytime this boots up, I don't even need a graphics utility program anymore, because this graphics card is going to be running at 1.2 gigahertz automatically. But I just don't want to mess with the BIOS when it comes to the graphics card. Even though it does have 2, I still find the graphics utility programs to be sufficient enough. This graphics card requires a lot of power. As you can see, it took up both of my PCI Express connectors that my power supply has. It requires an 8-pin and a 6-pin. But my power supply is able to deliver 2 8-pin, so you can see that 2 of these are pretty much not connected. And I'm not even considering the fact that I really have no upgradability options in terms of installing another HD 7970, because the performance level that I get from this HD 7970 performs relatively close to a HD 7850 in Crossfire X when they're performing up to spec and scaling well, especially in synthetic benchmarks. But in gaming, the single HD 7970 completely outperforms the HD 7850s that I used to have. So this has pretty much been an update of my my desktop with the new graphics card configuration. The I/O port on this graphics card here is relatively the same as my HD 7850 with a dual link DVI capable of up to 2560 by 1600 in resolution, and 1.4 HDMI, which is capable of up to 4K resolution, and 2 mini display ports with each of these capable of up to 4K resolution. So this graphics card can push some very high resolutions, and also it's capable of powering 6 monitors simultaneously if you get like adapters. And within the box, I did get all types of adapters. I believe I got a display port to DVI, DVI to HDMI. It was a plethora of accessories that came with this graphics card. So in case I ever do want to run a 6 monitor display, if I ever hit the jackpot, then yeah, this graphics card can push 6 monitors by itself. It's not even like it can just push 6 monitors. It can push 6 monitors, and it has enough horsepower to play games at smooth frame rates at such high resolutions. But this graphics card that I have here, I game at 1080p, and it's really pretty much overkill. And it's not bad having an overkill, component. It just means that you won't have to upgrade anytime soon, because it's really powerful. You have something that's way more powerful than your needs right now. So I'm pretty much satisfied with this trade. I've been running benchmarks on this, especially with overclocked and when stock, and it's performing amazingly well. In games, the level of smoothness pretty much outperforms the 2 HD 7850s that I used to own. And overall, I'm pretty much satisfied with this decision I made by going from the 2 mid-range cards to a single high-end card. So if you guys have any questions that this video may have not addressed, feel free to post them in the comment box. I'll try to answer them to the best of my ability. Thanks for watching this video, guys. Later.